Today we will be creating a quill pot or a quill vessel. So the things you'll need are your sculpture tools, some clay, and some water mixed with the clay. So this is your slip so that we can start to add the coils together when we're making our vessel. So the first thing you want to do is make sure you uh, wedge your clay. That's what we'll do first. So we have our clay here. Next what we're going to cut into a few pieces so that we can start to make some coils as well as make our base for our coil pot. So one of the things you want to do for your base, it can either be rolled into coils or it could be a slab piece. So we'll make a slab bottom first, and then we'll construct a coil one so you can see the difference. So if you're rolling or flattening out pieces of clay for your slab, continue to turn them over so they don't get stuck to the surface that you're working them on. And it helps even out the pressure that you're applying for your clay. So since this is the base for your project, it doesn't need to be super thin since it needs to support the overall amount of clay that's going to be on top of your project. So this looks good. It's maybe about 1/4 of an inch. Try to make it even all the way around. And then it could either be free form, so it could be whatever you want it to design it to be. It could be a circle, triangle, it could be geometric shapes. For this one, I'm going to make a free form so we can try something a little different. So I'm using a knife here to cut out our design. You can use your fettling knife. When you're cutting through, try to make sure your blade is pointing straight down so you don't have any angled cuts. So this is going to be our base. So what we're going to do here is smooth these out. So this is going to be our base now, our base form for our project. So we're going to also make a coil version. So I'll actually use the pieces that we cut off. So when you're rolling a coil, one thing you always want to do is try to get it into like a general shape first. You can do this in your hands. But your goal is to try to prevent like the pressure lines being stuck in your clay. So it's try to keep it cylindrical all the way around. So I'd suggest using a flat surface, and then what you're going to do is roll with your fingertips. So using this part of your hand and applying the pressure there, not the palm, because the palm it's higher here and then it dips in and then it's higher again. So just use your fingertips, roll back and forth, and as you apply pressure, Move your hands away from the center. So every time, maybe like you want to turn it over so you can try to even out the pressure all the way through. And as your hands separate from the clay, another thing to do, instead of keeping your fingertips so close together when you have smaller clay, that's fine. But as our clay is getting longer and longer, spread out your fingers so that you're applying the same amount of pressure evenly as you roll through your project. So we're starting to get a little bit of a lump here. So just try to distribute your pressure. You can start to hear sort of it's getting like a flatter side. So maybe just turn it a little bit. Try to even that out. It's a good start of our coil here. So I suggest cutting off the parts that are sort of getting either too thin or too thick. So we can just say this. So if this is our start of our coil, maybe you want to cut it on like a slight angle, because you're going to try to, what we're going to do is we're going to slip and score this part so it attaches to the inside of our design. So let's see. This is why it's really helpful to use soft clay at this point, so that it won't break when you're trying to apply the two pieces together. So let's put those there. And what we're going to do is we're just going to try to keep this as close as possible as we wrap our coil base. So the same thing, you want to do the same sort of design with the edge of your coil base. So we're going to put some slip and score here, and our goal is going to be to attach it, and so it creates one solid piece. So again, you can see slipping and scoring the edge is where I think I'm going to attach it. Doesn't mean you slip and score the whole thing, but the start and the finish will be very helpful to create a sturdy base for you. It also helps if you go back and just want to smooth those in. Creates a stronger start for your design. So we have two starts here. You have either the flat form, which is the one option where you roll out a slab and then you cut the shape that you want. Again, it could be geometric or free form, or you can use the coil method where you roll out the individual coils and then use either of these as your base point. And again, either can be used as free form or it could be used as a geometric shape. The next thing we're going to do is work on building up our surface of either one of these coil pots. And to do so, you need to make more coils so that we can start to add them on top of the surface. So same thing, just keep making more coils. Ideally, it would be helpful to have the quill be able to make one full length of your whatever your base form is, if it's the coil base already or the slab base, but it is not mandatory. But again, it's just cutting the edges of your coils so that when the next coil goes on top, it can sit right on top and it'll sit smoothly. So we want to cut the top of the surface so we can put the coil on. So slip and score. When you're applying each layer, you want to give it sort of a press down, just so you can make sure you are pressing your coil into the soft clay. Again, this is helpful if you keep your clay from drying out. So we didn't make it all the way around, so we'll cut this. So that the next one can start underneath this opening and just wrap right on top to make the second layer. So what we're going to do is we need to smooth out our first coil into our base. It's fine if you want to leave it showing on the outside, but to make a strong base, we want to make sure the inside is always smooth. So we're going to use our sculpture tools and smooth that out. So again, what you're trying to do is just sort of grab some of the clay that's on there and just try to blend it into the base that you created. So again, that could be either the coil base or it could be the slab base, whatever one you're choosing to use for your project. A helpful way to do this is if you line the two pieces of clay up to each other like this, and then you make the same cut at the same time. It'll make it easier so they fit inside of each other. And then you can just blend those two together on the outside so it looks like the same sort of coil. And what you're doing here is you're just going up this little ramp you made by cutting that coil, and you're going to start your second one. And same thing, you want to press into your previous coil. Press down into it. So it's going to be the same repeating pattern over. I'm going to go back with your sculpture tool. You're going to smooth out the layer you just made. And so by doing that, you got to smooth it into the previous whole coil. So if you're looking up here, try to smooth the second coil into the first, and that is going into the base. So ideally, it helps to not let your clay dry out. So maybe wrapping it into a bag or keeping like a wet towel over it, just so that while you're working on it, it's easier to blend them into each other and construct your coil pot. So it helps if you want, you can start your coil in your hand at first. If you just cut it and so it doesn't have any flat sides, that's totally fine. And then continue it again with your rolling it with your fingertips. So as you're working each layer of your coil pot, make sure to try to incorporate some of those other features that'll make your coil pot a little bit more interesting. So using negative space, so being able to see into your coil pot. We'll leave this next to it first. Negative space, using other geometric forms. So if you're already using the coils, maybe you're using some other sort of design. So maybe like incorporating triangles or squares to blend those coils together or make them other geometric shapes, other surface texture. So adding things on the outside, that's totally fine too. Just helps to sort of activate your coil design even more. So again, we just added 2 new layers here. We're going to go back and blend those together. So when you add the new layer, you don't want to blend all of that extra clay because you're going to need some of it to help grab the following layer that you're going to add in a second. So you want to grab from like maybe about halfway down of the new layers you add and blend those into your design. So it might not look pretty right now on the inside, but you can just go back with your thumb or a smoother tool and you can blend that out. Maybe add a little bit of water. You can make that entire inside surface completely smooth. That is totally fine. So we can start to see our coils are on the outside. If you want, you can also go back with like your K95 cleanup tool or like the fettling knife or the sculpture tool and sort of refine those even more if you really want them to stand out. But that could also be done later as your coil pot is being created. Your coils don't have to be super thin either. Depends on what kind of design you're trying to create. It's up to you. So if you are going to be adding the other features like negative space or different shapes, I would suggest trying to build up more of your base first before committing to one of those designs, just so you have some material to work with before you switch over to adding more features to your overall coil pot design. If your clay is starting to get, if your clay is too dry, you will need to slip and score each layer just to reinforce that support. So probably about every 2 or 3 layers you create, you want to smooth out that surface, the inside interior of your design. You always add a little water. Begin to smooth out your overall design compared to how rough it might be on the inside. So you're going to just do this as you build up your surface. Some other things, if you rolled smaller coils like this, these would be good options for adding the other features. Like, so if you're doing like the adding a spiral to your design, using these smaller rolled coils, it can help build up your designs without having to take away a lot of the features of your overall piece. So when you are doing this, you will need to slip and score these additional designs if they are coils, spirals, arches, other shapes, just so that they have a little bit more support while you're building up each layer around them.